Boom! Welcome into Sports Bet. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy Weekend Preview Edition. How about the Bengals and the Steelers? Packers without Rodgers. We got the Saints and Green Bay and the Super Bowl rematch. Sunday Night Football with the Falcons and the Patriots. We'll get to Game 6 tonight as well, Weekend Preview Edition. It all lays out for the Dodgers. Great spot now. They open the World Series Tuesday at home. They will throw Kershaw. They beat the Cubs in 5. Kike with 3 home runs and 7 RBIs. And how about this bullpen? They set the record, 23 consecutive scoreless postseason innings. Dodgers with an easy win yesterday. Favorites now 23-6 in the playoffs.
Yeah, and Dodgers, certainly a dominant performance for a team that hadn't been in the World Series in 29 years. They exercise the demons. They get back off a disappointing loss on Wednesday night. And as you mentioned, L.A. set up perfectly for the World Series. Kershaw getting his full rest between now and Game 1.
Yes, and now those bats have come alive for the playoffs. Interesting, Kershaw pointed out the losing 16-17 in September may have helped them, and every move Roberts made turned out to be the good one, correct one. Ethier goes deep, Kike goes deep, no Seager, no problem. Tough beat, not a moose. What a game, what a finish. Raiders win 31-30. The Chiefs are who we thought they were. They've lost 2 in a row now. And that bizarre sequence, Crabtree, you think they win the game, offensive pass interference, looks like Cook wins it down at the 1, then Cook's open for a touchdown, he drops it, there's defensive holding on that play, we got a walk-off touchdown, a walk-off extra point, Chiefs blow a 9-point lead in the 4th quarter, they had the fluke touchdown to Wilson that should have been intercepted, batted in the air, just like the Brown play last week. Raiders win, they saved their season for the time being, they improved to 3-4.
Yeah, and certainly from a betting standpoint, it was kind of a weird game. You know, we saw a lot of public money on KC, but we saw every bit as much as wise guy money on Oakland. And the line was painted 3 all week. The difference was the juice, the juice, depending on where you bet it and when you bet it. But, it was a wild, entertaining game. I'm never a fan of when officials decide games. When you have not 1, not 2, 3 penalties on the last, right there at the end with the game on the line, that's too much. Of course, the Chiefs left the door open for that Raiders comeback. KC moved the ball all day, but the last 3 drives, a field goal, a classic Andy Reid punt from Raiders territory, and then a 3 and out that left the door open for the Oakland comeback.
Bad for the books. How about this finish last night? What a day in the world of sports. Only the 17th time that all 4 major sports were going on, pro sports. Memphis +3 down to +1, and the total steamed up from 59 to 62. They were down 17-0 at the half. It's a bad beat, too, if you had the under. 17-0 in the 3rd quarter, and then they're down 17 late in the 3rd, and Memphis wins 42-38 at Houston.
Yeah, and again, if I had Houston in my pocket, I didn't enjoy the second half of that ball game at all. They shut them out in the first half and gave up 42 to Memphis in the second half. Same defense. A very different results. A kickoff return sparked the whole team. And then, of course, Tigers scored TDs on their next 3 drives after that kickoff return, while the Cougs went punt, fumble, interception on their last 3 drives. This was bad for the house all the way around. Lots of game day money on the over. Lots of underdog money on Memphis. This close pick 'em at Penny and a handful of books. So big move towards Memphis. And the bettors got to keep it all.
This wasn't good either. This was easy to hit. 3-team parlay with all favorites in the NBA. Here's 2 of them. Toronto bet up from 12 to 14. They beat maybe the worst team in the NBA with the Bulls, 117 to 100. And the Clippers from 4.5 to 6.5. Lakers down 26 at home in the 4th quarter, in the second half rather. Lonzo Ball was terrible. 3 points, -14 when he was on the floor. Like we touched on yesterday, if it's possible, the Lakers might be worse defensively than what they were last year, and that was the worst defensive team in 7 years.
Sure. And we saw it on Wednesday. We saw it again on Thursday. The early season NBA line moves are spot on. And the Raptors taking money. They were up, 58-31 in the first half of that game against Chicago. Chicago looked like a team who just got punched in the face, not just Miridic, who took that. And, of course, Lonzo Ball, what do we say about Lonzo Ball? A lot of hype. Nothing to back it up. Certainly not on the defensive end. The Clippers showed no hesitation, just putting the ball on the floor and going right past them in an easy blowout win.
No. Our stats guy, I talked to him earlier today. Look at the box score on that game. Look how many shot attempts the Clippers had, and look at the lack of fouls with the Lakers, which means they aren't even near anybody. Matador defense. Pros versus Joes. What do you have?
All right, so 18-7 for the pros year to date. And there's actually more games that the pros seem to like this week than the Joes do. Let's start with the pros. 5 games, clear choices that we've seen wise guy money come in on the Cincinnati Bengals against Pittsburgh. They're fading the Steelers, even though if the Steelers win at KC last week. We're seeing money coming in on the Minnesota Vikings. They're fading Baltimore and Joe Flacco. Pros have known all along how bad Flacco and the Ravens offense has been this season. We're seeing Giants money off the win in Denver, and I think some of it's anti-Seahawks money. There's been Broncos money. That line was -2.5 or +2.5 earlier in the week. I'm seeing pick'ems in most spot now. And the Atlanta Falcons, despite their offensive concerns, we'll talk about later in the show, they've been taking money. The wise guys not very interested in laying any type of price with New England right now. On the Joe side of the equation, there's not a ton this week. There really isn't. The public bets, Panthers, Titans, Jaguars. That's about it. Those are the 3 most public sides. Of course, the Joes, 9-19 against the spread so far this season, in sharp contrast to that 18-7 mark from the pros.
Who's going to play the Dodgers in the World Series? Can Verlander force a Game 7? We'll get to that. And 3 marquee games in the NFL on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBit, Betting Insight today. Time for Big Game Breakdown. Always sponsored and powered by Bet Online. Exceptional customer service, strong promotions, every type of wager we're looking for. Game 6 tonight, 5 o'clock Pacific, Fox Sports 1. Steam on the Astros. Open $1.20. You're seeing $1.45 in some spots in Vegas. Bet Online, they're 135, 7.5 the total. Under -125. Severino against Verlander. Verlander, complete game in Game 2, 2-1, 13 strikeouts, only 5 hits. 124 pitches, even with only 31 out of the strike zone. I don't know if Fatigue will play a role here. He's done this before in his career, and they're going to need him tonight because they don't want to go to that god-awful bullpen as well. I think a big key tonight, can they give him an early lead? Can they get something going on offense? The Astros led Major League Baseball, only striking out 17% of the time. They struck out 23% of the time in the 3 losses. Correa and Altuve, 10 for 30. Altuve, 10 for 37. All others, 12 for 113. They led basically every category in offense during the regular season. They're hitting 147 in this series.
Sure, and they got Verlander going tonight off a 124-pitch complete game effort. You can't understate how much 124 postseason pitches in a 1-run game are going to affect a veteran pitcher. It's only the second time he's reached 120 pitches over the last 3 seasons. The other was 121 against the White Sox back in 2015. And he was brilliant. Look at the quote from A.J. Hinch, a guy who really Hinch. Oh, here's a quote. Big moments are meant for big-time performers. From pitch 1, Justin Verlander was big for this team. Really. Pitch 1 as an Astro. But more importantly, this game today, he was exceptional in every way. Now, look, the Astros seem nervous. They seem tight in New York. Once they blew that Game 4 lead, wasn't pretty and hasn't been pretty from a mental standpoint. Verlander's the type of veteran that may be able to settle them down at least a little bit because that team looked kind of tight playing in the Bronx.
I don't know. What am I going to get out of Severino? I don't know. Horrible against the Twins in the play-in game and roughed up in a couple other starts, had a good year, but pitched well in Game 2. Was he hurt? What are we at? Where are we at with Severino? Yeah,
it was a weird situation. He had an awkward fielding play in the 4th and it didn't go back out there for the 5th. Here's his quote from Luis Severino. I didn't agree with that. I wanted to go over there and pitch. I was feeling good. Even though I didn't strike out anybody, I was feeling good. I was getting outs. And Joe Girardi says, I took him out because I think it's my responsibility to protect this kid. Severino, in his 3 postseason starts, has failed to notch a strikeout in 2 of them, including the Game 2 against Houston, We're talking about a guy that finished number 6 in MLB in strikeout percentage during the regular season. We talk about the strikeouts and lack thereof here in the postseason. In my mind, that's at least something of a red flag. One of the big reasons why I wouldn't be betting this game under the total. I lean over tonight.
All right. Give me the Astros. Home, get the favorites 23-6 in the postseason, and the home teams won every game in this matchup. Yankees have been great at home. They've struggled on the road. I'll take Verlander to force a Game 7. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. Bet online, good game. Steelers 5.5, 40.5 the total. Bengals 2-1, straight up, and 3-0 ATS since they fired Zampese and put Laser in there as offensive coordinator. It was short with the short, quick passes because of the shaky offensive line. And you look at this graphic with Andy Dalton. First 2 games, look at the jump in completion percentage from 54% to 73% in the last 3. Yards per pass, way up. Interceptions, he had no touchdowns the first 2 games, 0-4. Touchdown INT ratio at 7-2 the last 3 games. Here's Laser. As long as he keeps in mind this is the intent of the play and tries to stay true to that and manages the other options that might come if they leave somebody one-on-one, then he'll play decisively. I think that's the biggest thing, is they're getting it done and protecting him. A.J. Green's been terrific as well. They're getting him more involved. And once again, Eifert's hurt out for the year. Is that something? Seems like the guy's questionable every game anyways, but he's finished as well. So something else that the Bengals have to deal with on offense.
Yeah, but this year with Eifert hurt, it's been different. Tyler Kroft has stepped up at the tight end position for Andy Dalton. So the loss of Eifert, which, it killed him in the red zone in recent seasons, hasn't been the case, at least in recent weeks. And you look at Dalton and how fast he's been getting the ball out of his hands. His average release time the first 2 games was Zampese, 2.72 seconds. In the Laser games, 2.51 over the last 3. So he's getting the ball out of his hands quicker. Lo and behold, look at the last graphic we got here. It's taking pressure off of that Bengals offensive line. Look at the sack percentage. The first 2 games getting sacked on 12% of dropbacks. The last 3 under 8%. So it's certainly a Bengals offense that has shown dramatic improvements in recent weeks. Although I'll tell you what, Dalton's probably going to have to get the ball out pretty fast again, because the Steelers, number 3 in the NFL in sack percentage, and they've had their starting 11 fully healthy on the field defensively in each of the last 2 ball games.
Ben still has issues downfield. The accuracy, dead last in the league. Passes 20 yards or longer. He hit the 51-yard touchdown pass to Brown was a fluke, tip pass by a DB. Could have been intercepted. Maybe the downfall the last 2 years. No Heath Miller. No production out of the tight end. Green was a bust. He had the concussion last year. He only played in a couple games. This year, 19 catches for 177 yards from the tight end position. Roethlisberger on missing Miller. Quote, you develop that relationship with Heath over years and years in practice, the type of person and teammate he was. He was probably the best teammate I've ever played with and one of the best men I've known in my life. They got Bell going last week. He had a huge game, 32 carries with the big win on the road, but the Steelers have been inconsistent, although it was good to see that Brown had a big game and Bell had a big game for the first time this year.
I don't like these quotes coming from Big Ben. Talking about guys that retired 2 years ago and, I still miss them, and, he's the best guy I've ever known in my life. Ben Roethlisberger sounds like a guy who's ready to hang up his spikes. The quotes are consistent in that regard. And you talk about Le'Veon Bell. Look, they had 63 snaps against KC last week. Bell, 32 carries, 3 receptions. He's touching the ball 35 of them. I understand that he can handle an immense workload. That's too big of a workload, if you ask me, for Le'Veon Bell. We'll get back to this game when it comes to play of the day time.
All right, life without Rodgers up next. We've got a 12-point move in this game with the look-ahead line. Saints-Packers and the Super Bowl rematch Sunday night, Atlanta, New England on SportsBet. Betting insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBet Weekend Preview Edition. Here we go with the Saints and Packers. New Orleans is now 4.5 on the road, 47.5 the total. This was 6 earlier in the week. The look-ahead line before Rodgers got hurt was Green Bay minus 6.5, and it's 4.5 now at Bet Online. I think Rodgers is worth 10 points. Probably was worth a lot more than that the last time he was hurt. because Tolzien and Flynn and those characters were lost without him. And Hundley was terrible in the loss last week against Minnesota with 3 interceptions and all 10 points set up by Vikings turnovers. At the end of that loss, 23-10. Now, it's not just Hundley here, too, with Rodgers out. Green Bay had every available offensive lineman and cornerback on the field. Several starters were out, no reserves left. Just look at McCray's day. Started on the bench, went to left guard when Taylor was injured, moved over to right tackle when Balaga was hurt, then over to left tackle when Bakhtiari was injured. So with that combination of the bad offensive line and all the injuries in Hundley, he only had 137 yards, 4 sacks, 3 interceptions. The passer rating was horrible, 39.6. This whole offense is built around Rodgers. He can move. He can cover up a lot of things that stink. It's a disgrace what McCarthy and Thompson have done. Then in the prime of his career, they haven't helped him out with legit weapons. We'll see what Green Bay's able to do here. Good test as this state defense has come on the last couple of weeks.
Sure. And when you talk about, again, and everyone's going to talk about, oh my God, look at the market move, all these points, look how much Aaron Rodgers is worth. It's not just Aaron Rodgers. The Green Bay Packers finished the game last week with 3 third-string offensive linemen on the field. And that may well be the case when they take the field against New Orleans. All right. And here's the issue for Mike McCarthy. Does he try to get his injured guys back on the field for this game, but they have a bye next week? Is it better for the course of the season, give those guys a little bit of extra rest, not try to rush them back the field to re-aggravate things, and then worry about what this team's going to look like after the bye? It's an issue for Dom Capers, too. We talked about all the offensive line injuries. What about the injuries in the secondary? This secondary, all 4 starters from opening day are hurt. You know, does Dom Capers still try to stay with that nitro package despite all those defensive back injuries? Or do we see more traditional sets? A lot of questions for the Packers, not just at the QB position, against a Saints team that's suddenly come alive, Pauly.
14 starters on the injury report. Randall and House also not practicing. Be more injuries for the Packers on something as bad as on offense. That could be on defense as well. I thought that don't overreact to the defense. They got lit up by Bradford and Brady. No big deal. They bounced back, shut down Carolina, shut out Miami, and then a lot of takeaways and sacks in the win against Detroit. Football Outsiders, they've jumped from 31st to 15th in defense, and they're starting 2 rookies in the secondary as well, but 3 straight solid games. 5 sacks, 5 takeaways against Detroit, 2 defensive touchdowns. Kenny Vaccaro, quote, the vibes felt different. Something out there that I haven't felt. Taking the ball away, scoring on defense. You all have been here. We've never done that stuff. We've never done that around here, have we? No, you haven't. I'll answer your question. So the Saints don't have any injuries, unlike the Packers. For the second straight week, all 53 players on the active roster taking part in full practice. I think this team's going to make the playoffs. I believe in the Saints. Where are you at?
I'm with you 100%. And again, note the difference there. There's Green Bay. How many starters you say were out? Like more than half the team. Starters hurt for the Packers. Saints, all 53 players on the active roster took part in full practice. No even limited participation. So they're as healthy as any team in the NFL. And yeah, you're starting 2 rookies in the secondary, and Marcus Williams and Marshawn Lattimore. Those first couple games, there were a lot of struggles. That defense has looked good the last couple of weeks. Maybe. I'm with you, Pauly. Maybe it's time to rethink the Saints. Not quite the team that we thought they were after that 0-2 start.
Next up and last game, Sunday Night Football, the Super Bowl rematch. I don't know if you know this, but Atlanta blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. No one talks about it. Atlanta, New England, Patriots 3.5, 56.5 at home. Here it is. It's the ultimate revenge spot you're ever going to see in sports. But what's gone on with Atlanta? They've been outscored 33-7 in the second half of their last 2 games, and they were both at home, and it was Buffalo and Miami. That cannot happen. And the big difference is Shanahan to Sark, which we didn't like before the season. Last time we saw Sark in the extended role as a coach, he was showing up to work drunk. Here's the offensive decline from Shanahan to Sark. Points per game. Throw up that graphic. From 33.8 to 24.2. Yards per game. 416 to 378. Yards per pass, 6.6 to 6.2. Here's your big one. Matt Ryan passer rating, 117 to 87.3. Is it about Sark not being able to make the adjustments? Dan Quinn. You try to find out what was the cause of not being able to finish like we wanted. And that's what we'll do. We'll reset it and get right to it, because in our league, you got to get back and get ready to play again. You got to get the corrections first. All the ones are teaching moments, but you don't really get tested until you're in the fire. Definitely cause for concern, although they can get well here, as New England's become the first team in NFL history to allow a 300-yard passer in all 6 games.
Yeah, sure. It's a Falcons team that could very easily be 1-4 right now. They were able to escape in Chicago at the very end of the game. They got unbelievably lucky in Detroit to escape with that victory. We're talking about a squad that is not the same team as last year, and certainly those offensive stats showed it very clearly. And the fact that they're outscored 33-7 at home in the fourth quarter of competitive games over their last 2 contests, that to me is every bit as big a red flag as the red flag of the Patriots defense has allowed 6 straight 300-yard passers against them, the first team in NFL history to do that. Now, the Patriots laying points with them, wise guys won't do it. We have seen significant sharp support for Atlanta. Why? Because New England is dead last in the NFL in yards per play allowed, 6.6 yards per play. The Colts at 6.2 is the only team even within a half yard. So New England's lapping the field with their defensive ineptitude. Of course, Brady's making up for it. One of his best seasons ever at the age of 106. He's adjusted well to the new talent around him. 8.4 yards per pass attempt so far. That's the second best number of his career, behind 8.6 in 2011. Quick assimilation with Brandon Cooks. 24 catches, 19.7 yards per reception. Worth noting, the Falcons' defense hasn't exactly stepped up and made plays in the fourth quarter of these last 2 games either. And that's certainly a concern going up against Tom Brady and company.
You're right. Brady's saved their bacon. They're lucky they have a winning record. 106.9 rating, almost 2,000 yards passing, and 13 touchdowns to make up for that horrible defense. It's going to be a good one on Sunday night. Money time, play of the day. Back to the Bengals and the Steelers. Give us the dog, right, Teddy?
Sure, let's go. Game number 455, or betting number 455. That would be the Cincinnati Bengals. No Bungles this week. They're the Bengals, plus 5.5. Steelers, we talk about the home field. They haven't been that good at Heinz Field of late. Just 2-5 ATS, their last 7 at home in the regular season. I'm not convinced that Steelers offense is fixed. Give me Cincy, plus the points. Bengals, plus 5.5 is our play of the day.
All right, there it is. Loaded show next week. Every Monday, we love it. We recap the college football weekend and the NFL Sunday. Tuesday, the World Series starts. We'll have that matchup and more good matchups in the association as well. Get to all that coming up next week on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com. This was the weekend preview edition. Good luck out there. Thanks for watching.